Hello, welcome to the video on access management. Today, we are going to review the fundamentals and true basics of access management. This is going to be a series of sessions, at least 8 to 9 sessions. By the end of it, you will have complete idea of access management and you will call yourself an expert. Of course, I am going to discuss the architectural patterns, business use cases. At the end, I'm going to demonstrate using live tools so you get end-to-end understanding. Remember, great things comes with great pains. It's not really easy to learn certain things. So I'm going to take my time to explain it so that it's clearer. I don't want this to look or sound like complicated topics. So sometimes I might repeat. Forgive me if I re-emphasize or repeat certain topics. But when we teach fundamentals, it's better to take your time to learn. And when I take a lab or anything, right, demos, all those things are not important, but fundamentals and learning the foundational architectural concepts are really helpful, and it will stay with you forever. It's not going to leave you. The knowledge is not going to leave you. So if you really see the topics, I am not going to discuss technologies that are going to die tomorrow. This is the foundational components, concepts. Anyway, welcome to the group presentation. And if you are one of these, this presentation is for you. If you want, subscribe. If you don't want, don't. Access management is our focus today. We discussed about identity management. 2-3 sessions were given on identity management. Identity management has no much relevance unless it is applied on access management. Rest of the pieces that I mentioned in this presentation are also important, but we are going one by one. Access management is going to take a long time to cover because it's too complex and too large. So access management is about managing resources. And what is a resource? A resource could be a printer, a database record. For example, if you are managing projects or managing events, information about a customer, right? That's a resource. Every customer record could be a resource. The entire database table in which all the customers are living in, that's a resource. So that's a table resource. The other one is a record resource. Now, when you click on a menu to search for customers, right? The menu is a resource. When you see the search screen is the resource. Every text box, that means search box are searched by first name and last name. First name is a resource, last name is a resource. When you click on search button, that's a resource. And you get the search result. The search result is a resource. Every data record that you see on the search result is a record. Every column in that grid, the search result grid, is a resource. Every cell is a resource. As far as I am concerned, anything and everything in a software system can be a resource if you choose to. The atomic nature and the more atomic characteristics you can bring into a resource, the better it is for you, because you can have super granular control on things. Now, when I say managing a resource, it's not about creating a customer information. When I say manage a resource, I meant it's not about how to edit the customer's first name, last name, or anything. It's about finding out an identifier for that particular record and managing the security of that particular record. That's what I meant by managing resources. So just imagine you have a data record and you have right click on it and say manage the data record resource type. And the resource type is data record. And the resource type has got a particular ID and many other details associated with it. That means the resource itself, the record itself, has got additional resource type information available. So it's a printer, right? Uh, and in really advanced security systems, you provide more and more attributes to a resource type so that it's queryable. It has got a lot more information than uh, many other systems. So today in typical systems, a data record is not recognized as a resource type. Printer is recognized as a resource type. Scanner is recognized as a resource type. Database is recognized as a resource type, but not a data table, not a data record, right? And systematically, when you start creating approaches to recognize these as resources and the ability provide an ability to manage those resources, that's when an authentication system elevates its level to a true enterprise level, right? Now, once you have all the resources identified, do you need to identify? That's a different question, right? You don't want to change something that's working, right? In software, one of the basic principles that apply is minimize the cost. If something works without an elegant solution and good security, you don't need to change it just for the sake of academic excellence. Many people build super architecture, academically excellent architectures, university architectures. They do not work in real life. Real life, they're inadequate and insufficient. So we have to remember, if you don't need to do something, don't do it, right? But current uh, professional enterprise level identity management, identity and access management softwares, they provide something called identifiers. One is a resource identifier, one is a user identifier. So that's pretty common these days. And resource identifier comes with some information, but most of the times the application, the developer, with his some of the information is in mind, some of the interpretation that he gives to the resource ID and resource access is managed in the source code. So it's not configurable, it's not isolated, it's not low code. Uh, when we create a systematic database about resources, that's when things get more streamlined and systematic, right? So managing resources is about basically providing additional attributes about resources and able to manage it, search it, trace it. Now let's talk about grouping resources. This is a large topic. We are going to discuss this 2-3 days, 2-3 sessions. Uh, Basically, I discussed grouping a user and user groups or user roles. The, organizing the users is highly important to us. I would say in a company with 5,000 users or 10,000 users may have 1 million to 10 million resources. So it's highly important that we group resources. Now, every company and every software system actually organize groups resources, right? They group resources and put into a single bucket called data. Data is a resource, printer is a resource. So they have 2-3 buckets, that's all. And that works for them to some extent. Then what they do is customer data and product data. And they say you have access to customer data, but you don't have product data. So basically what they did is they created two Data is a resource type, and customer is a resource, product is a resource. That's the way they worked it. I want much better. I want each product is a resource. I want each customer data record is a resource. Customer itself, the customer table itself is a resource, optionally, only if it is needed. If it is not needed, don't use it, because the more resource types and resources you define, more overhead for the security to manage it. Security system will have overhead, security administrators will have overhead. So only if you need it, do it on need basis, right? So grouping resources is your approach to put all the resources that are having similar access needs into a same bucket. Now, it does not have to be about security. Sometimes these resource groups can be used for some other purposes as well. But for this particular video, I am only limiting this to security. So you create security user resource groups and add resources into that group and provide access to those groups instead of the individual resources. This is a really simple approach. However, most of the times we do not use it. And in this video, I'm not even going to discuss how we're going to do that, because we are going to approach this using a different technique. Classifying resources is one of the techniques, right? So what you do here is, instead of grouping the resources, means creating 100 resource groups and adding all the resources into the resources groups, what you do is you classify your resource types. For example, in your customers resource type and product resource type, you say a customer is highly critical resource type and product is not very critical, right? You just mark that in your resource type table. So you basically open up customer resource type, and there is a field called criticality, and you choose high for customer, and the criticality you choose low for product. And that's how you classify a resource type. And there are so many approaches to classify the resources, right? And that's what we're going to discuss. And we are going to discuss how that will simplify your access management, right? So I'm moving to the right hand side, associating access. So when you have access, how to give access to a user or a group of users to a resource or a resource group or a custom rule-based resource class, right? So that's something that we need to discuss. And evaluating access is the other part, right? An application will go and pick up a resource ID, find out the resource user ID, and match them and get all the resource accesses. For example, it will get 100 grants and one deny for read access, write access, admin access. So there are 10 types of custom 1 access, custom 2 access. There are 10 types of access for a particular user against one record. And for every groups, right? And resource groups and resource subgroups. So you have to do all those things against a particular user and evaluate the result and deny the access. So just imagine you click on a menu called search for customers, and a menu comes out with a screen with first name, last name in the search filter and search results. So imagine for every record, every column, this kind of security access evaluation needs to be performed. The system will break down, right? So that's the challenge. If you have a lot of resources and if you have a lot of users, how do you actually evaluate these user groups effectively? Do you even need to evaluate everything? Is there any way you can skip evaluation? Is there any way you can skip evaluation using establishing a security hierarchy, security inheritance? There are so many techniques when you build a system. But one thing that you want to do is you do not want to evaluate hundreds of records of access permissions, tens of groups, tens of resource groups, tens of user groups, all the permissions between them, evaluate, consolidate. You don't want to do that process for hundreds of resources with a single click of a button, right? So that's the purpose of this series. Anyway, tracing, I discussed this tracing before in the identity management software. If you are given a resource, and if somebody asks you who are the users got access to this particular resource with what kind of access, and the reverse of that, you are given a user ID and you're asking, tell me the list of resources who have got access to, who this user had got access to, right? The reversal tracing. Can a security system provide that, right? So those are the needs of advanced security system. I will also discuss something to do with AI for the deep learning purpose, but that's an advanced topic. Probably I will provide that towards the end of it. Now, as I mentioned, the access evaluation is a complex job, right? Many people think complex solutions, complex scenarios, and doesn't matter how complex it is, we need simple solutions, right? And people make presentations and motivation speeches about it. We should depend on simple solutions. Simplicity is the key and all those things. But simple solutions are the best solutions because it does not cost a lot, simple to implement. But most of the authorization systems in the world today, they cannot support many features, right? They are not good enough. They are general purpose. They what they do is they provide the scope of evaluation to the end developer. They don't do the evaluation. They just send basic microscopic API interfaces, and much of the work has to be done by the end developer many times. But most of the simple application, that's okay because it's simple anyway. So simplified security is good. But I am talking about SaaS-based applications, which needs really complex partners, integration partners, and multi-vendor, multi-tenant situations. And sometimes oversimplified security does not meet your needs. So if you're thinking that this is too complex, right? Also remember, I am talking about all the options. Out of the 10 options, you must engage only one option. You don't need to put 10 layers of security for everything. But certain times you need to. For example, if you're going to talk about authentication, I would ask you to put as many layers as possible. But in authorization, you put one layer uh, because it's too runtime costly. Uh, Now, access management has is not as simple as you think. It has different flavors on different segment. For example, an app, how an app derives its access. Uh, I'm talking about the gate access, how to enter into the app, that access. There are so many ways an app can decide its access, and it's too complex. And I have a presentation ready, which I am going to give it in a day or two. It's going to be an hour presentation, long presentation, because it is complex. And when I explain it, you will understand, wow, I never knew these things existed, right? Now, companies like Microsoft and AWS, they have systems like this behind the scene. They never tell you. The architects of Microsoft and AWS, they are not allowed to explain the internals of these systems. They can only tell you how it works, how beautiful it is, how it looks like, how it solves your problem. But internals of security, if they reveal it, you bet next day somebody else is going to build it, right? They don't want their IP stolen by anybody. So that's what you're going to learn here. So many of things are new to you, and even if you're 20 years experience, you will feel, oh, I never knew these things existed. It's okay because we on a regular basis and regular programmer life, you don't need to know any of these things. This is for people who are actually building IAMs or trying to understand IAMs or cybersecurity officers. You know, you say, I'm a cybersecurity officer, I'm expert of this, and if uh, you might want to know this, right? Anyway, app-based security is highly important. This defines who can call this app, uh, who can consume, log into this app, who can consume what? Can this app call another app? Can this app be called by another app? All those things are evaluated, right? It's too complex too. Can somebody log into the system without authentication? Anonymous users. Is there any boundary checks? There are so many things that you need to worry about when someone logs into the system. So a basic access management software, right? Identity management software provides you with the user information and its login credentials and all those things. Access management repository will give you access checks. It will only tell you whether this resource ID has access to this user has access to this resource ID. That's the only information it will give you. You just call it and say, hey, give me the information about this resource and user group. So the access management repository system service will go against the user groups, all those things, does all the evaluation, come back to you and say that granted or not granted, or granted on read, not granted on write. Right? They give that kind of information back to you. We'll review exactly how it works and screenshots, all those things later, but that's what it does. But how to apply that on an app, that's a different business. So that's what app-based security evaluation process is going to explain to you. Complex topic, we will go through that. Page-based is a little bit more complicated. A page security has to take several factors into consideration. It has to consider if app has got if the user has this app level security enabled to take and review this page. This page comes from a customer database. So the customer database system, does it allow this user to be a user to access this system, right? And the page also comes with the data, particular data record of, let's say, Johnson. Johnson is a customer and his data record is can that be accessed by this user? And what kind of access, read or write? So there are several layers of security embedded or applied on a page request. So that's what we're going to review in the page-based security. Menu-based security is really similar, but a menu if that belongs to customer ecosystem or a product ecosystem, the ecosystem denies a search on customers. If, for example, at a system level you define, hey, this customer or this user cannot customers, search for customers. Now, it does not matter. You put 100 menus, 100 application, however you put it, the search will not happen. The menu will not display. So traditionally what happens is in a system, you create a menu and put in an application saying search customer. And when a user clicks on the menu, the search customer feature will go back and tell, no, you don't have access. So the user get confused. If I don't have access, why did you even display the menu, right? So whether to display menu or not is something that the developer, the original developer, has to decide, and he has to write a code saying that, okay, if the user does not have access to search, don't display this menu. Then the developer has to go to the search screen and say, when he clicks on it, okay, user cannot click on the search screen because he doesn't have access. Then the actual search executes on the web server. Then the developer has to go to that place and block him, saying that no, you don't have access to it. So there are so many places the developer has to actually engage the authorization, right? But don't you think the every menu that is registered with the customer should automatically take effect, right? Those are the philosophies that we need to discuss, right? Reducing the developer overhead or reducing the developer errors, especially in security. If any of these places, if the developer forgets to add the check, the person will have access to the customer, and that's a security violation. It's a defect, but it's a security violation. So we need to make sure users the security is done right with a minimal overhead. Anyway, so the menu-based security can get complex. I'm going to discuss it in detail. Role-based security is a little bit different than all this. Role-based security comes into play when a particular user has a defined role in an application. And most of the time, the user does not have a defined role in the application. User logs in, user does not, nobody tells user is somebody, right? User has admin privilege, or user has got, right, ability to define schools, that's all. Nobody tells user is in a particular role many times, but sometimes yes. But if you have application specific roles defined and the user can use that, that's when the user role-based security comes into place. Capability-based security is a little bit complex and slightly different from feature-based security, which I'm going to differ from this meeting. But these are uh, two different approaches to security, looked differently. We will review later. Now, data level security and database security. There are two types of securities. Many times people see this as same. Probably it's same, but I want to differentiate these two. Data level security is applied at levels. Means, let's say you have a customer. A customer has got 10 orders, placed 10 orders, and he got 10 orders delivered. Now, you can decide a user has access to this customer information, read-only access. The same user has access to 5 of these orders, but the user does not have access to another 5. And then you say a second user has access to all the records, but read-only. So basically, you can define at a hierarchical level what kind of access is given to a customer or to a user on a customer and its child records, right? That's a hierarchical access provided at a data level, right? So database security is it's not hierarchical, it's not level based. It can be level based, but it is mostly based on attributes. You check on the attributes of a data. For example, a customer is a um, premium customer, don't give access to some people. Right? If the customer is a private customer, don't give access to the customer. So based on the data attributes of a customer, or a customer has 100 sales happened, a customer has got 250 a customer has got a order which is more than 10,000 records. So It's still accessing the hierarchical information, but it derives attributes and customer data classification information based on it, and applying security based on the classification, right? That's what database security is. But data level security is a bit different. Data level security goes at multiple levels, right? Hierarchical levels, and it you can provide access to a particular record at multiple hierarchies, but still based on attributes. So data level security still can use database security, but it's more advanced at each level. Field level security. Imagine you have a screen where every field needs to be secured optionally, and you have ability to do that by just securing each and every field using its security system, which I'm going to demonstrate to you through a live demo. Custom coded security. So this is really important. So custom coded security comes in handy, especially for an advanced security system. Let me explain this to you. Most of the times what you do is you create all kind of systems like app-based security, page-based security, and data level and data-based both securities. At the end, you realize there are certain places it doesn't work. You can't get it. There's no, you mix and match the rules. Still, the security is not being applied, right? So that's where you need to apply a custom security, right? So what I do is I'll demonstrate to you how it is done. What you do is you inject a processor, a rule evaluation processor or access evaluation processor, and the processor reach back to the context of the calling context and gets the information, evaluates, and give you yes or no. I'll give you a demonstration on how it is done, and that will show you how the custom grouping can be done. Anyway, so those are the major aspects of security and authorization. The next step is to identify one important thing. I wanted to show you app-based security in detail. That's a 1 hour session, too complex. It's not that easy. But to understand that, you need to understand one important piece called classification and grouping of resources. If you don't know how we can classify resources, how you can group the resources, it is not going to be an easy journey for you to the rest of the securities. And once again, grouping is easy, right? Grouping is like-minded resources, group them together and call it as a group. Classification is a bit different. You choose a resource type and classify the resource type into something, right? It's going to be a bit difficult. Now, when you classify resource types into certain buckets, I call it buckets. There are two ways you can do it. One is a app bucket, the other one is a data bucket. They both work really different. A app bucket is point by point verification, right? One by one verification. But the data bucket is not point by, it's search. You search for a huge data set and you say, I don't have access to a certain classes of data. That means the search has to incorporate it, and search has to be so complicated that it can only search data from the buckets it's created. So the data classification is not highly recommended and recommended, but it's really, really minimal. For example, if you have a company has got a wholesale department and retail department, only two departments. One is wholesale, one retail. Then you can say all the data that goes into every data record, you can say this is retail, this is wholesale. And any user who comes in who has access to retail will find all the retail record. Who has access to wholesale will see all the wholesale record. But somebody who has access to both, they see both, but they cannot write into one, right? Only read only into one section. So that kind of complicated search can happen for data classification, but app classification is a bit different. But let's talk about it in a little bit more details in the next presentation, how to classify resources. Okay. Till then, thank you very much for listening to me.